Hello, and welcome to the Content Advantage, a talk show about content for content professionals. I'm Scott Abel, and with me today is my co-host, Megan Gilhooly.
Hey, Scott, how you doing?
I'm great, Megan. How are you?
Very, very good. Very good for a Tuesday. All right. So, Scott, as you know, we talk a lot about personalized content experiences, especially in this digital content world. And major researchers like Forbes, Evergage, and Accenture have new data that show that companies are really still investing in personalization. And not only that, but that users want personalized content. So because personalization is such an important capability to develop, we've invited global content strategy specialist Val Swisher to talk to us about some of the content personalization revelations that she's discovered as she was creating her book that is coming soon from XML Press. And that book is entitled The Personalization Paradox: Why Companies Fail and How to Succeed at Delivering Personalized Experiences at Scale. Val, welcome to the Content Advantage.
Welcome, Val.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here with you guys. So good to see you.
We're so glad to have you back. Now, you were with us about a year ago, and so it's been interesting to watch your journey. And as someone who works for a vendor of a SaaS platform that really facilitates the delivery of personalized content, I'm really excited for us to uncover somewhat again, but some of the new secrets to personalized content experiences and to really hear your advice for personalizing technical documentation content at scale. So before we get started, can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and why you're here today?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm Val Swisher. I'm the founder and CEO of Content Rules. And among all the things we do is content strategy. We work with all sorts of companies in life sciences, med device, pharma, technology, manufacturing, finance, you name it, on their content strategy. In fact, very recently, Anne Rockley, the mother of intelligent content, transferred the rights to the Rockley method to Content Rules. So now we are using the Rockley methodology. And it's been extremely exciting to work with customers using it. And of course, Anne's going to be on a show with Scott very soon talking about her new endeavor too. So that and the book are our big things going on lately. So thanks so much for having me.
Oh, no,
very
thank
nice.
you. And thanks to our audience for joining us. For those of you who are new to the show, let me tell you a few things. Today's show is being recorded, so you can access the recording using the same URL that you're using to watch today's live show. About 30 minutes or so after the show ends today, that recording will be available to you, and you can share it with others, and we hope that you will. Also, we can't see or hear you, so you don't have to worry about your camera or your microphone. They're private, and we can't access them. You can ask a question of Val at any time by using the Ask a Questions tab located in your webinar viewing panel. It allows you, just with a single click, to pop open a little text editor and send us a text message. We can't message you back, but we'll have received your question and we'll ask as many of Val as time allows. You can also access additional content, including a 40% discount on ebooks from our friends at XML Press, content from the guest presenter, Val Swisher, and there's also some content from our sponsor, Zoom In Software, available in the attachments section of your webinar viewing panel. We're going to give away 3 copies of Val's books, which I'm so excited about: The Personalization Paradox: Why Companies Fail and How to Succeed at Delivering Personalized Experiences at Scale, at the end of the show today, so stick around to see if you're a winner. And on the way out the door, I'll remind you of this at the end of the show. Give us a rating from 1 to 5 stars, with 5 being high rating, letting us know how Val did on the show talking about personalization. I know she'd appreciate your feedback.
Very nice. So let's get going. Let's dive in.
Excellent.
So the secret to personalizing technical documentation experiences at scale, if you could sum this up in one word, what would it be?
The secret is standardization. And it is completely counterintuitive.
Yeah, it makes my eyes.
Yeah.
It is completely counterintuitive, hence why we call it a paradox. That if you want to standardize content at scale, you're going to need to did I say standardize? If you want to personalize, where's my coffee? You want to personalize content at scale, you're going to need to standardize everything about that content.
I think that says it all, and that's very clear. I'm sure that the book delves into that topic a little bit more, so we definitely want to encourage people to grab the book to get more in-depth knowledge about that. We'll ping some questions here from the audience about that as well. But now that the secret is out, Val, why do companies actually need to build the capability to deliver personalization at scale?
Well, so there's two parts to what you just asked. Why do they need to personalize? And that's because study after study after study shows that consumers are expecting to see only the content that they want to see and need to see. They don't want to go finding the needle in your haystack. And the other part of it has to do with scale. Because up to this point, companies have really been floundering as to how to do this. And one method that they have tried is to create different content for each. They haven't tried for each person yet, but at least for each persona, and deliver that content. And that doesn't scale. So those are the two parts to that secret. It's the expectation and the reality.
Before we move to the next question, I just was curious, do you think that the consumer personalization experiences with content from a business to consumer has impacted the expectations that B2B customers have?
100%. There's no doubt. Because, as people, we just experience content. We just have experiences online. And B2C has done a much better job at personalizing content and delivering what I want than B2B. A much, much better job. So I think that we take that expectation and we carry it with us wherever we go. And it doesn't make sense if B2C can do it, why B2B is not doing it.
Yeah.
Right. That totally makes sense. You think about if you're reading through a guide at work and you're having to sift through all this other information, then you go home and you sit down in front of Netflix and it just hands you exactly what you wanted without you even knowing you wanted it, right? There's such a difference in that experience. And so we are constantly having to drive at that. Can you think of anyone, preferably in the B2B realm, but maybe it's just B2C, but anyone from your vantage point that's really doing personalization particularly well?
Well, in the B2C space, there are lots of companies that are doing it well. I mean, it really seemed to start with Amazon that, the Amazon experience is I launch and heck, I'm putting things in my cart. They might as well just put it in the cart before I get there. Right? I mean, seriously.
Now your cart is ready.
That's so true.
Your cart is ready. Just click here. One click.
My husband always has a heart attack when I have all these boxes show up and he's like, what did you order now? And I'm like, dude, it's soap. Like, we need it. But Amazon knew I needed it before I did. So just saying.
I was talking to Regina Preciado, who's my co-author on the book, yesterday about Chewy, because we both have dogs. And Chewy, I don't know, they know that I have very large dogs. They have figured me out when it comes, and who doesn't spend money on their dogs, right? I mean, Spotify, I'm taking a class, an AI class right now on business and AI. And one of the assignments was tell us about a company that's using AI in a really cool way. Well, Spotify's algorithms are very well known in terms of personalizing other music that you might consider based on music you've listened to in the past. So B2C has really got it down. B2B? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Scott.
I was going to say, do you find that it's just because in the nature of kind of conversion and marketing that they felt B2C companies felt like compelled to do it because it's the next step toward closing the deal, and that's all they're really about is closing the deal. Whereas maybe a lot of B2B publishers are publishing different kinds of information, not always designed just to convert to a sale.
I think it's possible. I think that's possible. Let's remember that even in B2C, technical content has not caught up to marketing content.
Right.
And my favorite example of this, I needed to replace the battery in the key fob of a Honda Civic. I'm sorry, Honda. I'm not picking on Honda. This happens with all companies. When I go out to find the instructions, I am handed the manual for a Honda Civic.
Right.
I don't want the manual. I want the 3 steps. Get this size battery, get this size screwdriver, open it up, stick the thing in, give me a picture, close it up, done, go drive your car.
Right.
We have not caught up in technical content. We really haven't. And that's in B2C and B2B. So I think companies have historically paid more attention to marketing content in B2C because they want your business.
Right.
You know, I wonder if it's because companies like Netflix and Spotify, their business is the experience, and the experience is their product. And so they focus on it. I read something about Netflix and how they personalize their content, and they have something like 2,500 different user types, which in essence are personas, right? But how many of us have teams big enough and data scientists around to be able to specify 2,500 different personas? We don't, right? But they do, because that's part of the cost of doing their business.
Yeah, and their goal is to get you to click on the thing that they served up to you, and that's probably a cue to their system that personalization effort was rewarded by viewing. And so then the more that they learn from you, I think the more they try to personalize the experience, which is really interesting. We did a test with some friends. We had everybody log into their Netflix account and then look up the same movie, and each of us had a very different photograph advertising the same movie. It was not a box shot that you would get like a Blockbuster. Everybody gets the same box with the same picture. It was a special picture served up because they thought it would make me click or my friends click, which is really an advanced method. Megan, this might be a really good time to tell our audience then about how B2C and B2B companies that are trying to make their technical documentation experiences scalable and personalized can do so using Zoom software. Can you tell our audience a little bit about your software company and what it does?
Absolutely, I'd love to. So Zoom's platform ingests technical product content from any source, no matter how it was created or published, and we deliver it into a documentation site, into your community, into your customer service site, or even into the product itself. Most importantly, we personalize the content delivery using metadata associated with the content and the user information that we've identified either through login credentials or through preferences the user has chosen. And by using these things together, we serve up the most relevant technical product user, very much in the same way that Netflix would serve up entertainment.
And is that, just to be clear, is that possible for both B2B and B2C technical content? Does it matter at all?
We typically sell to B2B enterprises. Certainly the technology that we use would be interesting for B2C, but our customers may be B2B or maybe B2C.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So, and it depends.
Great. And for the audience members, there's some information about Zoom software in the attachments section of your webinar viewing panel. And of course, you can stop by their website at zoominsoftware.com. I know they would love it if you did that. Val, getting back to the show, I've heard many people talk about personalization, and they each seem to have a different idea about where in the customer journey or the life cycle of the customer's interactions with the brand that this personalization should occur. Where does the magic of personalization happen, or where should it happen, and why?
Well, so there's, again, 2 parts to this. In terms of delivering personalized content, the reason companies are failing is that they're trying to personalize the content at the wrong place of the content lifecycle. That really is the problem. And that's why companies have not been successful with this. And where they're trying to personalize the content at the point of content creation.
Mm-hmm.
Complete wrong spot to do it. To personalize content at scale, you need to personalize at the point of delivery. So you need to, just as Megan was just talking about, zoom in. I mean, that is the paradigm. You need to have a robust collection of components of content, small components that stand individually on their own, that at the point of delivery can be put together in whatever order needed, and then packaged and formatted and delivered on the way out the door. That's the key to doing this at scale.
That makes really good sense. And I apologize because I have a kind of a surprise question for you, but I know that you'll have some thoughts about it. If delivery, if personalizing at the point of delivery is the right way to do it, how did you discover that it was the wrong way? Did you observe people trying to do it at the point of creation? And what did you notice that, because they're well-intended, right? They're trying to do it. What were they doing that made it fail? I mean, not having standardized components is one thing, but was there something else that happens at the point of delivery? Like, are we using, the point of creation? Are we using psychic power at the point of creation instead of data at the point of delivery? Is that the problem?
Well, the problem really is scalability. Theoretically, could you do it at the point of creation? You could, but that means you're creating different content for every single person. And that is just not scalable. It's not scalable.
Right.
And companies have tried that.
Okay.
They really have tried that. And they failed. You know, I mean, there's just so much content you can create, manage, store, retire, publish, change, deal with. So doing it at the point of delivery means that you can reuse little components of content to create new things for each person. And that is the secret to scalability, is being able to create something new for each person based on standard components that are in your repository.
Excellent. Thank you for that tweetable moment. For those of you on Twitter right now, that would be what I tweet. That's the secret.
Yeah, you know, this makes all kinds of sense. And if we really sort of dumb it down, I'm going to take us back. How many years would this be? About 15 years. I used to run a company called Snailers, where we would print and mail postcards for people. So we did wedding announcements or Christmas cards or whatever kind of holiday cards, birthday announcements. So very much like something you would see today, but this was sort of before the time of when everyone was doing this. And when I think back to that, the idea was, instead of us handwriting or copying and pasting the message onto 150 different postcards, we just did a mail merge, right? And so this idea of the mail merge was huge for us as a company. And now this is sort of like mail merge on steroids, right? We're having to fill out the structure so that the right information is available, so that when the delivery tool asks for the information, it just knows where to get it. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at, right?
Oh, yes. Mail merge gone bad. Dear name. We have all
There's another tweet.
Dear name.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Without a doubt. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a similar idea. And a lot of companies have moved towards personas to try to do this. Now, Scott and I go way back, and he knows I've always been anti-persona, and that's because I am very anti-stereotype.
Right.
So when you create content for a persona, not a person, you are making a whole bunch of assumptions about that person, which may or may not be accurate. And you have to have a lot of personas as well. The fewer personas you have, the more times you're going to fail in delivering the right content.
Well, like Netflix with their 2,500 different personas or whatever the big number
their
is, right?
incidental problem, right? Like it's incidental that to me, I'm in this group, but you put me in this group and you don't recognize that I'm slightly different. So now I'm kind of incidentally shoved into this thing because of the way that you're doing it.
And then I'm actually insulted sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, you really risk it. And let's also remember that personas do not translate.
Right.
They do not translate. So let's also keep in mind that personalization is not just in English.
Right.
We are a global, enterprises now have to talk to everybody. And I started my dislike of personas years ago when I wrote the book on global content, which is, believe it or not, already 7 years ago. How is that possible? That personas do not translate at all. Facial expressions do not translate. So if my facial expression doesn't translate, and we think that that's innate, a persona doesn't translate. So we have to be really careful. If you're going to personalize, you do run the risk of insulting people. So you have to be really careful.
I think it's important to mention that there are probably a lot of people on the call that are big fans of personas. And I don't think what we're saying is you should go throw out your personas, because there is a need for personas when it comes to user experience with the site, with developing the right software based on, specific personas that your company is trying to market to, right? There is a need for that. What I think you're saying is, don't take it to the next level and think that if you're writing content to a persona, that is personalization, because it's not. It's a different thing, right?
Exactly.
It's writing to a persona, which is a very different thing than personalization that you're talking about, which is very, very much about bringing up the right content at the right time for that one person, not for a general persona.
Robert Rose, who wrote the foreword to Val's new book about personalization, which we're going to give away at the end of the show, also, and he and I had a friendly debate on a conference stage once about the difference between personalization with personas and personalization with individualized information. And this was a few years back, so it was easier to do the persona approach. And I think that that's why some marketers were aiming that way. But one of my snarky comments was, the only thing that personalization has in common with me is that the word person is stuck in there. If it's persona personalization, because you're just assuming that I fit in that group. And yeah, I'm male and I'm that age, but I live in a totally different area of the country than the other people that you're customizing for. So for example, I received an ad for furniture to purchase for outdoors in the summer from a company that was trying to expand their reach into the Western United States. Unfortunately, they picked all black furniture, which no one in their right mind would put black furniture on a patio in Palm Springs when it's 120 degrees. You can't sit in it, right? You have to spray it down with water before you can even
get
on it. And I talked to the company, and they said, we used metadata from the newspaper model, and we were thinking that, hey, they're in that area and we can get our products there, and these guys make the same kind of money and they have the same kind of demographic environment, their city, so it must be the same. But they never considered weather, right? And so my dad might have bought the furniture, it would have been great in Indiana, and he might be similar to me in my persona group, but because of where I live, it's totally different. So
what's interesting, there was an old book called The Inmates Are Running the Asylum.
Yes,
and that's where personas really kind of came into the development world, and it made all kinds of sense, right? If you have one persona that is taking the bus to work, that will make your developers think about, what if somebody's taking the bus to work? And so there was good reason for personas there.
Right.
When we move it into personalizing content, we run into issues. So I just wanted to ask something else. There's also this idea of personalization in sort of a negative connotation, right? There are a lot of people that are I think the other personalization paradox is that people want to have delivered exactly what they want, but they don't want you to know anything about them. And so there's kind of that. But what types of misinformation have you seen that creates kind of a negative perception, specifically about content personalization?
So I love the fact that you just said there's another paradox, because I hadn't actually thought about that paradox, and you are a gazillion, that's a lot, % right. You are so right, because it's study after study is telling us that people want personalized experiences.
Yes.
And study after study is telling us that companies don't believe they're doing it enough or doing it well. Yet, we have things like GDPR, there's this creepy factor.
Right.
Right? Because companies are tracking us. They are tracking us. There's no doubt about it. They're tracking us. The only way I can personalize content for you is if I know something about you.
Right.
And there's only 3 ways that I can know something about you. One is I ask and you give it to me. If we're at that point, it's a little late. Right? I mean, if I'm first asking you for information, now you're really annoyed. Think of the chatbot experience. You know,
right.
Oh, I hear you're blah, 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 blah. Like, stop telling me what I just told you. The second is I already know something about you. So, you know, Honda knows that I own a 2015 blue Civic, blah, blah, because I bought from them, right? Well, the third way is that the company is tracking your activity online. And let's keep in mind that one of the real reasons that we can do personalization today, and we couldn't have done it 10, 15 years ago, is big data. Yeah. The reason we can do it is big data. Mm-hmm. Because with big data, companies know all kinds of things about us. Right. And, you know, it does seem creepy. I mean, who hasn't been on Facebook where it's like, why am I seeing this ad? Like,
right.
I'm seeing the Barbie dream house. I can tell you why, because I bought my niece the Barbie dream house or whatever, or the Barbie camper for Christmas. And now I get Barbie recommendations all the time.
Yes.
It could be worse.
I always talk about how just because you can personalize doesn't mean you should. And I think the key to proper personalization, honestly, there's 2 words. One is it has to be helpful. So for example, when Starbucks sends me a free drink on my birthday, I'm all down for that because I'm completely addicted to my Starbucks drink. And so that's really helpful to me. But if and I always use an example of one time I got a text from an eye doctor that my daughter saw one time. I didn't remember who the doctor was, honestly. And this was like 2 years later, and they sent me a text on my birthday. So I recently told my orthodontist, don't send me texts on my kid's birthday because it's not helpful. It doesn't make me feel good about you. It's annoying, right? So just don't do it. So helpful is one thing. And then proper segmentation too, right? If you think about Netflix, if Netflix put me in a persona of a mom, then probably they're going to get it wrong because I don't necessarily, like, me being a mom doesn't really dictate what I like to watch on TV, because typically when I'm watching stuff on TV, it's after my kids go to bed, right? So it doesn't necessarily indicate. So getting the segmentation right. So I always talk about like helpfulness and segmentation are the most important things when it comes to personalization. And, you know, at the end of the day, creating structured content so that a delivery tool can segment helpful personalization at the time of delivery is really the key to doing it at scale, which is what I love so much about your book.
I have to tell you, completely side note. So my kids are older, they're in their 20s, they're gone. And I just wish Netflix would keep sending me Disney. I really miss. I mean, Netflix is not sending me Disney, and they clearly don't understand that I am all about the G-rated. You know, it's the opposite. It's the opposite.
But they should. If that's what you're watching, I'm surprised they don't know that.
That's the other secret of the show. We'll keep that between us.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Happen to like Disney.
For our audience members who wonder if the show is about to end because we're at the 30-minute mark, we're going to go over a few minutes and take questions from the audience. So if you haven't already asked a question of Val, you can use the Ask a Questions tab located underneath your webinar viewing panel to text in a question for us. I'm going to take one right now instead of taking the question I planned, Val. Segue for just a second and ask this question from an audience member. If the content needs to be packaged at the point of delivery, when does the content that goes into the package get created? Do we need to have templates ready to go, or does the content delivery work better in bits and pieces?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a fundamental question. So the key to making this work is to create your content in a structured environment where you are creating small components, individual, that can stand on their own. They don't necessarily need to be combined with anything else. They are free of format, and that is key. They are format free. And so you have these components, you have a big library, and they're tagged with metadata. So you can find these components so that it can be automated. Systems can find the components you want. Then before publishing, they get put together in whatever order they need to be for what you want. The format is applied at publishing via style sheets, and out it goes to you. It doesn't touch that big library of components that you write and you update. And let's remember, this is single sourced. Every component only exists one time. You write it in one place. You update it in one place. You retire it eventually from one place. But you use it in all different kinds of assets that you publish in different orders. You mix and match. Right? And you have this library can be multilingual. So here's all my French components, you mix and match. At the point of delivery, it's compiled in the order you want, in the format you need for the device that you need, and out the door it goes.
Very nice. There's a related question specifically about developer guides. So this person says, regarding personalization and creation versus publication, how would developer documentation fit that model? For example, I write developer guides for Windows and Unix developers. If I don't define OS-specific code examples at creation, how would I be able to show the correct samples at publication?
So there are a variety of ways that you can address this. I'll just give you a couple. One way is that your code examples are, a code example is its own component.
And it's content, right? To be clear, it's
right.
This situation.
Right. I mean, this is very specific. But if your code example is a separate piece of content, then everything around that example, if it's the same, let's say it's the same between Windows and another operating system, that part you write one time, you have different code examples for your different operating systems, and at the point of delivery, you pull in the code example that you need. That's just one way of doing it. There are other ways using conditions. You might use variables. There are other ways to do it, but that's planning your reuse strategy. How are you going to reuse your components so that you have the least amount of content to write, manage, organize, change, and you can publish whatever you need.
So I think adding to that, I want to make sure that everyone understands that you're not saying don't write content that is specific to a person. What you're saying is write the specifics within a structured format with metadata and taxonomies and all kinds of stuff that allows a delivery tool to know when they're targeting that person, which of these blocks they need to pull, which is very different than don't ever write OS specific code examples. Right.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I wonder if we can make a commercial example. So, for example, marketing content. If you were trying to sell your product to some buyers who represent shopping stores, right? Different kinds of grocery stores. There are little tiny convenience stores. There are family-sized grocery stores, and then there are big, like warehouse grocery stores. And if you're pitching to the person who's a buyer there, and you gave them a long list of the value proposition of what buying their product would do for them. Oh, we give you bags and we give you coupons and we do this, that, and the other. That might be really attractive to that little bodega because they could use free bags. But Costco doesn't do bags. All they care is if it stacks, is it in jumbo size? Can I buy it at a discount? And by the way, they recycle the boxes, and which means that they're offloading their recycling cost onto the customer by not accepting bags. So I talked to a buyer from one of the big markets, and he said, the marketers give me a long list of stuff and then they make me find the value proposition that's right for me. They should know I'm in a warehouse. I only care about stacking, quantity, pricing, does it come in a box, right? And I don't care about anything else. So if we tagged each one of those things, I think what you're saying is when you deliver to the people who run the big box stores, you only deliver those tagged elements that they care about and you leave the other ones behind. They're still there. And you still created them. They're just not served up at delivery.
Exactly. And that's why you need to chunk your content into small units. And one of the challenges that we face as content creators is sort of the art and science of how big of a chunk is the right. What's the right size for a chunk?
Yeah.
How do I know? And it's very difficult to have. There are best practices, but the answer to that is it depends, right? It depends on your content. It depends on your uses of the content. So I've done other talks. You can find them in other decks.
We'll have you back to talk about reuse that another time.
Yeah, absolutely. There are strategies, but that's exactly right. If you're Costco, you only want things tagged for big bucks. If you're Trader Joe's, you want things tagged in a different way, that sort of thing.
Perfect. That makes a lot of sense. Megan, do you want to take some questions from the audience before we run out of time?
Yeah. So just so you know, somebody totally relates to your key fob example. They wanted to make sure that you knew that. So good on that. But there is one specific. So once content is packaged this might be more for me than you. It's about PDFs, but once content is packaged for delivery back to us through Zoomin, what would be the process to convert this to PDF? Yes, they say, sorry, we don't want to produce PDFs, but it is a requirement right now, which we totally understand. I'm wondering what else we'd need to produce PDFs at the end. Thanks. So I have an answer to this. Do you have an answer?
Do you, Val?
We probably all have answers to this, other than the fact that PDFs are where all good content go to die. Just letting you know that PDFs are the graveyard of all good content. A PDF is another output. Mm-hmm. So as part of your publishing process, your output is a PDF.
Yes.
I don't mean to make light of it, but that's really what it is. It's just another type of output that you use for your content. You could output to HTML, you could output to whatever your chatbot wants, you could output to whatever an app wants, you can output to PDF.
Megan, where were you?
I'll add to that just a little bit, and that is that none of us want to be in the business of managing PDFs. Managing the publication of PDFs is a nightmare. That was great 20 years ago, but it's just not something you want to do. However, when you need PDFs, having a delivery tool like Zoomin that will allow you to dynamically generate PDFs. So you can choose which topics you want, put it in a library and hit PDF, what I just selected. Yeah. That's the way to sort of single source your content and still have delivery to HTML and PDF.
Megan hit on the right thing. And I think there's another little tiny ingredient there that happens before, which is you are providing an experience where the customer's trying to locate the information they need. Once it's presented to them on the screen and they validate, oh, this is my key fob information. Then if they decide it would be cool if I could have a PDF or share it with my spouse or whatever. Now you have little controls that allow that person to say, take the information you gave me and send it to my spouse, or take that information and make it a PDF. That way you don't have to make the PDF before they find the content. You're making it afterwards as a command from the person, which is actually more personal. It allows me to select how I want the content.
Yes. And the next step is, if Val has now PDF'd her key fob information, she wants to be on a watch list so that when we update that information, she gets a notification, right? So that's the next step to that.
Yep.
Next question. Do we have time for more questions?
Oh, yeah, please. We've got a couple more minutes.
Okay. What about the confusion that personalized content can create? This looks interesting. Let's say two people trying to talk about the same topic and they have a completely different perception, as they never met generic content or the other one's perspective. Do you see big issues regarding this? Interesting. This is sort of a philosophical question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would like to think that if we do this right, we won't confuse people. I would like to think that it is possible to tag content appropriately so that now let's remember, the key to this is automation. There's no one person sitting back there, there are no gerbils, running on the treadmill. Exactly. So I would like to think that as we create content and we check it into our repository, we're tagging it in such a way that as we know about a person, we can look for the appropriate metadata and the appropriate components to pull and provide. But what I want to make sure people understand is, I am not saying all your content needs to be generic, because generic content is not personalized content. Right. I don't want to know how to replace the battery in any kind of Honda key fob, because that's part of the problem. Part of the problem is I either get the whole Civic manual or I get a manual with how to replace the battery in every key fob that Honda has ever made. Neither one of those are acceptable. Right. So I'm not saying you should be generic. I am saying you should chunk your content so that, yes, you're going to have generic pieces, because things that are the same across all key fobs, you want to write once and have a single source of truth. But then you want to have that very specific picture of that key fob, perhaps. Perhaps the only difference is a Civic looks like this and a Accord looks like that. I don't know why I'm picking on Honda.
No, but you would need that generic content, right, to start off with, because if you don't have a relationship with Honda, and Honda didn't sell you anything, and you've never been to the Honda website, and you just Google it and land on there, there is a reason to have some kind of generic content. But I think Megan's company seems to help companies then say, hey, we recognize that you might need some information about this or this or this. Which pathway would you want to go down? And then once they pick that, it filters out a lot of the noise, and it gives them a more clear path. And so you're not really forcing them to read a certain kind of information. You're allowing them to filter out the noise that might not be relevant for them.
Right. Well said. And I think the reason I said it was a philosophical question is because I think what this person might be getting at is this idea of, let's say I'm an expert and Scott's an expert, and I read my version of content and Scott reads his version, and then we have a conversation and our conversation doesn't match up. When you're talking about news, that would be important, right? When we're talking about how you replace your Honda key fob versus how, Scott I don't know what kind of car you have, Scott, but his, Ford, it's called a Ford. Mercedes, ooh, BMW key fob. So whatever his key fob is, you're not going to have a conversation about, oh, how do you replace yours? Oh, this is how I replace mine. Like that's just not really going to happen. So it's sort of that's why I call it philosophical. Yeah. But I think your answers are very much right. The personalization is there to reduce the noise, the stuff that doesn't pertain to you, so that you don't have to have those conversations about, here's the 25 different ways you can do something.
I'd like to ask Val the last question, and then Megan, have you take the last question from the audience that's in the chat bot or chat room right now. The first one, Val, before we take the last audience question is, this kind of seems overwhelming to some people, I think. Definitely sometimes difficult is probably a word that's associated with it, and maybe potentially expensive would be some folks' concerns. What can the audience members do today to get started and to all at once versus the phase approach? Do they have to jump in and just like start personalizing stuff, or should there be a more standardized approach that takes them into it so they'll be more likely to succeed?
Yeah. So the most important thing is to have a plan, is to have a strategy. In fact, I am working with a company right now, a huge company right now, that didn't have a plan. They just sort of got a CCMS and got, an authoring environment and took some content and got it in there, into the repository and managed to tag it, and lo and behold had an output. And they don't know what to do next because they have, a million pages of content. So you really need to have a plan. There are ways to do this without boiling the proverbial ocean. There are things you can do today without getting a new tool, without, without spending money on things other than learning and starting to put some best practices into place that will start to get you there. But the most important thing is having a strategy, because this is different. It's very different, and it can be overwhelming.
Right. So I have two questions actually from the audience, but they're very tied. So I'm going to ask them both all as one big lump. So somebody asked, are there content systems that can do the work of tagging content with metadata and mixing and matching the phrases? Or is this very new and we would have to create software to automate these functions? They also asked, would DITA work for this content creation in a structured environment? And then another person has a very related question, which is, what sort of investment in time and cost does this take to generate these kinds of systems?
Okay, so auto tagging is something that is really somewhat new. It's not ubiquitous yet. No. The whole concept of metadata and tagging is now being taken up many, many levels, where we're looking at companies having knowledge graphs and semantic AI, semantic tagging, where systems will be able to do this without us.
Yes.
I've seen a few. They are complicated. I'm not going to lie about that.
Expensive.
They are complicated. They are expensive. Like all technology, I do think that over time, the UIs will become easier to deal with and the cost will come down. I do believe that we will see systems really taking over the tagging problem rather than people, because writers going through the drop-down list and checking the metadata is not scalable. Systems will be doing this, and they are starting to do this.
Yeah.
DITA, yes, DITA is certainly an environment that works for this. Investment in time and cost. It is not cheap to do this if you're going to take it all the way through, and it does take a while. So you need to make sure that you have your ROI calculations laid out in your plan. It can take, I have a customer I'm working with where we are on a 2-year plan to transform all of their content into their new system.
Right.
This is not, they have a lot of content. So obviously it depends upon your content, and you need a strategy. There are so many approaches to take. So it could cost 7 figures It
Right.
could cost 7 figures. You need to look at the ROI as well in your plan.
Can I throw something in there for you about cost then? So for the audience members that don't know, Val and I also co-produced the Information Development World Conference, which we're hoping to bring back post-pandemic or in a new format soon. But one of the things that's interesting is that it doesn't have to cost $1 million. It just depends on how much your content you have. For a conference, Val and I care about a couple of audiences. Sure, we care about everybody, but in particular, we care about presenters, exhibitors, and attendees. And so sometimes presenters need the same information that an exhibitor and attendee does. Where is the building? What time does it start? How do I get there? All little modules of content that I can tag so everyone gets them. But attendees don't need to know about booth space requirements, only exhibitors. So even if I only tag them in a simple system and just said, these are the 3 personas I care about, I can actually do that same thing. And if I had technology like Zoom in, I can actually deliver the right thing at the right moment to just those 3 audience segments. Could it be more complicated? Yes, it could. Could I invest with higher technology? I mean, you know what I mean? And big data and artificial intelligence. Right. Yes, but it's overkill for my situation. So maybe sometimes a technical communication team could start off by modularizing content, tagging it, and then using a rudimentary system to push it out until they get the gist so that they don't get mad. What I've seen, Megan, and Val, is I've seen companies adopt the software, start doing it, and have the experience Val described earlier where they didn't do the work up front. So it doesn't produce the results. The personalization is like off,
right?
You know, and so then they blame the vendor of the tool. It must be the tool, and it's like, no, it's not the tool. You could have done this on a chart, on a board on your wall with Post-it notes and strings, and you could make all the connections. The system just deploys it for you. So I think there is the possibility that you can start without having to invest tons of money.
Very
Absolutely.
nice.
Absolutely. And you should. You should start before you invest a ton of money and have a plan.
Or you could just say you should start. Because a lot of times we feel like, oh my God, what is this? And then we never start. I wanted to just mention that Zoomin is investing a lot in this idea of tagging and knowledge graphs and how to do taxonomy better. And so you may see some cool stuff coming out from Zoomin in the next few months. So keep your eyes peeled.
On this show too, because we're going to have some folks come and talk to you about knowledge graphs and semantic content in the future, and that might fill in some of the blanks today that we were unable to fill in just the short amount of time that we have Val Swisher available on our show. I'm so excited that you came today, though, and before we say goodbye, I just want to give away a couple copies of Val's new book. So let me first show you the picture, because this is amazing. Val is so excited to see her book come to life. So I'm going to pop it up here on our screen. The Personalization Paradox. This will be what the book looks like when you receive it. And if you want to, our friends at XML Press, the publisher of Val's book, have a sale on all ebooks, 40% off until March 31st. You can look in the attachment section of your webinar viewing panel to get information on that particular offer. Also, I wanted to tell you that the 3 winners of the books are Bobby Werner of Hillrom, Mike Ian Tosca of Avalara, George Allegriza of Dell, and I apologize if I mispronounced any of your last names. That was my coffee tongue there going. I'm very excited about that, and I'm happy that you were able to join us.
No, thank you so much. It is always so much fun to talk to you guys. So thanks for having me again. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks so much for being here. Before anyone signs off, I want to make sure they know that we want to hear what you thought of today's show. Use the Rate This tab located in your webinar viewing panel. Give us a 1 to 5 star rating. Definitely leave comments. We read every single one of them. We'd love to hear what you liked about it, as well as what you think we can do better. So definitely give us that rating.
And if you've got an idea for a new show, you can use that little field in the rating to type in some idea. And
absolutely,
we'll consider it without a problem. So definitely do that. And I'd also like to encourage you to be on the lookout in your email for an invitation to the next Content Advantage show. It's Tuesday, March the 16th, when we chat with Ann Rockley, the mother of content strategy. She's coming to talk about the human side of content production. In about 30 minutes, Rockley will help you understand the value of investing in the development of strong, high-performing content teams. And she'll take a look at how you can harness the innate abilities and instincts of your team members. All right, we'll discuss this problem and focus on productivity over results on that show. And we hope that we see you then. Until we do, stay safe, be well, and keep doing great work. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Ensure your customers find the answers they need with Zoomin. Bring together product content from all teams and sources to deliver a unified, personalized content experience. Check us out at www.zoominsoftware.com.
Bye. See you later.